Have you ever had to choose between holding your dying child and chasing the woman who just walked out of your life? Have you ever been powerful enough to shut down an entire city block with a single phone call, but too weak to lift your own body off a hospital bed? Have you ever read a goodbye letter while your newborn son was fighting to breathe through a machine and realized the woman you love chose her freedom over your child's first heartbeat? That was Kang Seo-jun. And this is the story of how the worst night of his life became the foundation for everything beautiful that came after. There's a moment when everything changes. For Seo-jun, that moment came when 3 bullets ripped through the back window of his car on a Tuesday evening in Atlanta. Today, I'm bringing you a story about loss, betrayal, and the impossible choice between the life you built and the life you deserve. Welcome to Afro-Korean Narratives. Let's begin. The first bullet hit the headrest 2 inches from Seo-jun's left ear. The second punched through the car door and buried itself in his side, just below the ribs. The third caught his shoulder as he threw himself across the back seat, his body moving on instinct even as his mind went blank with shock. Glass rained down like ice. His driver screamed something in Korean. Tires shrieked against wet asphalt. And the world tilted sideways as the sedan fishtailed through the intersection outside Park Tavern, where 30 seconds earlier, Seo-jun had been checking his phone for a message from his wife. She was 8 months pregnant. She hadn't texted back. That detail stuck with him more than the blood. More than the ringing in his ears. More than the way his left arm stopped responding when he tried to reach for the door handle. He thought about Nia. Not the money sitting in 17 accounts across 4 countries. Not the men who would scramble when they heard what happened. Not the name of whoever had ordered this. Just Nia. Her face when she laughed. The way she pressed her forehead against his chest when something scared her. The small, quiet voice she used late at night when she told him she was afraid their baby would grow up without a father. He had promised her that would never happen. Now he was bleeding onto Italian leather seats, watching the streetlights blur overhead through a shattered window. And that promise felt like the cruelest joke he had ever told. They got him to Grady Memorial in 9 minutes. His driver, Kwon Tae-ho, carried him through the emergency entrance with blood soaking through both their shirts. Tae-ho was yelling in Korean, then switching to English, then back to Korean, and the nurses moved fast because they could see it in Tae-ho's eyes. This was not a man who panicked easily. Whatever was happening, it was real. 6 hours of surgery. 3 bullets removed. 2 blood transfusions. If you're new to this channel, welcome to Afro-Korean Narratives. Get comfortable because this story doesn't let go. Hit that subscribe button and tap that bell so you don't miss what happens next. And if you're already part of the family, welcome back. Let me know in the comments where you're watching from tonight. Now let's get back to Seo-jun, because what happened when he woke up is something no amount of power could have prepared him for. When Seo-jun opened his eyes, the ceiling was white and wrong. Everything smelled like antiseptic and plastic. Machines beeped in a rhythm that didn't match his heartbeat. His throat burned from the breathing tube they had pulled out an hour earlier. He tried to speak. Couldn't. He tried to sit up. Pain knocked him flat. He turned his head to the left, expecting to see her. Nia. Sitting in the chair beside the bed. Eyes red. Fingers wrapped around his. The way she always positioned herself when something went wrong. Close enough to touch. Steady enough to hold him together. The chair was empty. A nurse stood near the window with an envelope in her hand. She was young. Nervous. She wouldn't look directly at him. Mr. Kong, she said carefully. Your wife left this for you. About 4 hours ago. 4 hours. She had come to the hospital. She had stood somewhere in this building while doctors were pulling bullets out of his body. She had written a letter. And then she had walked out. 4 hours ago. His hand shook when he took the envelope. Not from pain. Not from the morphine wearing thin. From something deeper. Something in his chest that felt like it was cracking down the middle. The letter was short. No date. No heading. Just her handwriting. The same handwriting that used to leave little notes on the bathroom mirror. The ink was smudged in 2 places, like water had fallen on it. Or tears. I love you. But I can't raise a child in a world where I get phone calls at midnight telling me you might not come home. I can't sit in another waiting room wondering if you're alive or dead. I can't pretend this is normal. I'm leaving before I lose you completely, Because watching you die slowly is worse than walking away while you're still breathing. Please don't come looking for me. Let me go so I can stay sane. So our baby can have at least one parent who isn't buried in something they can't escape. No forwarding address. No phone number. No promise to call when the baby came. Just absence. Clean and total, like she had rehearsed it. Like she had been planning this for weeks and the shooting had just given her the excuse to finally do it. Seo-jun read the letter 3 times. Then he folded it, pressed it against his chest, and closed his eyes. He did not cry. Not because he was strong. Because something inside him had gone quiet. Like a switch had been flipped. The kind of silence that comes right before a building collapses. Everything still standing, but nothing holding it up anymore. And then the doctor came in. And the silence got worse. Mr. Kong, your wife went into early labor before she left the hospital. Stress-induced. The baby was delivered by emergency C-section approximately 5 hours ago. Seo-jun stared at him. Your son is alive, the doctor continued, his voice measured, controlled. But he was born at 32 weeks. His lungs are underdeveloped. He weighs just under 4 pounds. He's currently in the neonatal intensive care unit on assisted breathing. His son. He had a son. And Nia had given birth to that son in this hospital, signed the discharge papers, written a goodbye letter, and left. Left the baby. Left him. Left everything. Not the money. Not the houses. Not the cars. She left the child. She left a 4-pound baby connected to wires and machines and prayers. And she walked out into the night like motherhood was something she could fold up and put in a drawer. That was the moment Seo-jun understood something he would carry for the next 9 years. Some people don't leave because they stop loving you. They leave because they never loved you enough to stay when it cost them something. And the cost of staying with Kang Seo-jun had just become more than Nia Crawford was willing to pay. They brought Seo-jun to the NICU in a wheelchair the next morning. Taeho pushed him down the hallway in silence. No words. No reassurance. Just the sound of wheels on linoleum, and the low hum of a hospital that never fully slept. The neonatal unit was behind double glass doors that required a badge to enter. A nurse met them with a mask and a gown. She helped Seo-jun put them on without asking questions. Without commenting on the bandages visible beneath his hospital shirt, or the way his jaw was clenched so tight the veins in his neck stood out like cables. They stopped in front of incubator number 7. And Kang Seo-jun, the man whose name made grown men in Atlanta, Savannah, and 3 counties in between choose their words carefully, looked down at his son and felt his entire body go cold. Gabriel. He was so small. Impossibly small. His fingers were no bigger than matchsticks. His chest rose and fell in quick, shallow movements. Like a bird that had been dropped from a height it was never meant to survive. Tubes ran from his nose. Wires connected to patches on his skin. A monitor above the incubator flashed numbers that Seo-jun didn't understand but knew were bad because the nurses checked them every 4 minutes. 4 pounds. 32 weeks. Lungs that weren't ready for the air outside his mother's body. And his mother was gone. Seo-jun sat beside that incubator for 6 hours the first day. He didn't eat. Didn't check his phone. Didn't ask Taeho about business, about the investigation, about who had pulled the trigger outside Park Tavern. None of that mattered. The only thing that mattered was this. His son's chest kept rising. As long as it kept rising, Seo-jun could sit here and pretend the rest of the world didn't exist. But the rest of the world didn't care about his grief. On the 3rd day, Taeho brought news. Not the kind Seo-jun wanted. The kind that arrived anyway, like weather. The shooting wasn't random, Taeho said quietly, standing near the window of Seo-jun's hospital room. He held his phone like it was something heavy. Jaemin has been making calls. Park Jaemin, Seo-jun's underboss. The man who had been with him since the beginning. Since Busan. Since they were teenagers running errands for men who never learned their names. What kind of calls? Seo-jun's voice was flat. Empty. Like someone had drained the bass out of it. The kind you make when you want to know if someone survived surgery. Silence. Not surprised silence. The other kind. The kind where you already suspected something, and the confirmation just makes the air heavier. Seo-jun turned his head toward the window. The Atlanta skyline stretched out in the distance, all glass and concrete and movement. From up here, The city looked organized, efficient, like everything was where it was supposed to be. He knew better. How long? Siuyun asked. We think he started planning about 3 months ago, around the time Nia got pregnant. 3 months. His own underboss had been plotting to kill him for 3 months, while Seo-jun was picking out cribs and reading books about fatherhood at midnight, while Nia was decorating the nursery in their Buckhead estate with yellow curtains, because she didn't want to know the gender. Yellow curtains. 3 bullets. A baby born too soon. The math of betrayal never added up the way you expected. Is he still in the city? Siuyun asked. No. He moved 2 days before the shooting. Took a piece of the operation with him. About 4 million in cash and the loyalty of maybe a dozen men. Which men? Taeho read the names. Some of them hurt. Most didn't. But a few names on that list were men Seo-jun had trusted with things more valuable than money. Access. Knowledge. The kind of information that could dismantle an empire if placed in the right hands. Or the wrong ones. There's more, Taeho said, and Seo-jun could hear it in his voice. The part he had been saving. The part he didn't want to say out loud. Tell me. Nia didn't leave alone. The room seemed to shrink. What do you mean? A man picked her up from the hospital. White sedan. Virginia plates. We pulled the parking garage footage. She got into the passenger side. No hesitation. Like it was planned. Seo-jun's heart rate spiked on the monitor beside his bed. The machine beeped faster, louder, and a nurse glanced through the doorway with concern. He waved her off. Who? The word came out like a blade. We don't have a name yet. But the car was rented 3 days before the shooting. Same timeline as Jaemin's exit. Same timeline. That detail landed in Seo-jun's chest harder than any bullet. 3 days before someone tried to kill him, his wife had arranged a ride out of his life with a man Seo-jun had never heard of. 3 days before his son was born fighting for air, Nia had packed a bag, picked a moment, and chosen a stranger over the family she claimed she wanted. Did she know about the hit? That question would eat at him for years. Did she know what Jaemin was planning? Did she leave because she couldn't stomach watching it happen? Or did she leave because she was counting on the bullets finishing what her letter started? He would never know for certain. And that was the cruelest part. Not the betrayal. Not the abandonment. The mystery. The not knowing. The permanent, unanswerable question that would sit in the back of his mind like a stone he could never fully swallow. Gabriel's monitors alarmed at 2 in the morning on the 9th day. Seo-jun had been sleeping in the chair beside the incubator. Not real sleep. The shallow, restless kind where your body shuts down but your mind stays circling, waiting for something bad to happen so it can say it saw it coming. The alarm was sharp and high-pitched. 3 quick beeps, then a long sustained tone that made every nerve in Seo-jun's body fire at once. Nurses rushed in. Someone pushed him back gently but firmly. Through the glass, he watched as they adjusted tubes, checked readings, pressed buttons on machines that spoke a language he didn't understand. Gabriel's oxygen levels had dropped. His tiny body had decided, for a few terrifying seconds, that breathing was optional. They stabilized him in under 4 minutes. For minutes that lasted longer than the 6 hours of surgery. Seo-jun stood in the hallway afterward, his back against the wall, his hands pressed flat against the cold surface behind him. His shoulder screamed from the stitches. His side ached where the second bullet had torn through muscle and grazed a rib. But the pain in his body was background noise. The real pain was in the understanding. He was alone. Completely, impossibly, fundamentally alone. No wife. No mother for his child. No underboss. No certainty about who he could trust. A baby who might stop breathing again at any moment. And a body that couldn't even walk down a hallway without getting dizzy. Kang Seo-jun, who once controlled the flow of money and fear through half of Georgia, stood in a hospital hallway at 2 in the morning, and felt something he had never felt in his entire adult life. Helpless. Not the kind of helpless that comes from losing a business deal. Not the kind that comes from watching a rival move against you. The kind that comes from understanding that the person you need most in the world decided you weren't worth staying for. And the person you would die for is 4 pounds of fragile hope behind a glass wall. And there is absolutely nothing you can do to guarantee he sees tomorrow. That night, for the first time since he was 15 years old, Seo-jun cried. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Just tears running down his face in the dark while machines beeped behind a closed door, and the woman who was supposed to be beside him was somewhere on a highway heading toward a life that didn't include him or their son. Gabriel spent 41 days in the NICU. 41 days of beeping machines. 41 days of nurses adjusting wires on skin so thin Seo-jun was afraid to breathe near it. 41 days of watching monitors like a man watching a clock counting down to something he couldn't stop. On the 12th day, Gabriel opened his eyes for the first time. Dark brown. Almost black. Just like his father's. Seo-jun was sitting in the chair beside the incubator, his arm in a sling, his side still wrapped in bandages when it happened. 1 second the baby's eyes were closed. The next, they were open, unfocused, blinking at the fluorescent lights like the world was too bright to make sense of. Seo-jun pressed his good hand against the glass. "I'm here," he whispered. "I'm not going anywhere." He didn't know if he was talking to Gabriel or to himself. On the 23rd day, Gabriel was strong enough to be held. The nurse showed Seo-jun how to do it. Skin-to-skin contact. Shirt unbuttoned, baby placed against his chest, a warm blanket draped over both of them. She explained the science. Something about heart rate regulation, body temperature, bonding hormones. Seo-jun didn't care about the science. He cared about the weight. 4 pounds and 6 ounces. That's what his son weighed when he held him for the first time. Barely enough to feel. Like holding a thought. Like holding something made of breath and hope and nothing else. Gabriel's hand found Seo-jun's collarbone and rested there. Tiny fingers spread out against the ridge of bone. And Seo-jun felt something shift inside him. Something structural. Something that could never be moved back to where it was before. He didn't just love this child. He feared for him. And fear, Seo-jun realized, was a different currency when it was attached to something you couldn't bear to lose. While Gabriel grew stronger ounce by ounce, the world outside the NICU was tearing itself apart. Jaemin had moved fast. Faster than Seo-jun expected. In the weeks following the shooting, 3 of Seo-jun's legitimate business fronts received surprise audits. His construction company's permits were delayed without explanation. A property development deal in Midtown that had been months from closing suddenly fell through when the investor received an anonymous tip about the source of the capital. Someone was feeding information to exactly the right people. Someone who knew which threads to pull. Jaemin wasn't just trying to kill Seo-jun. He was trying to erase him. Taeho delivered the updates in pieces, standing in the hospital room doorway like a soldier reporting from a losing front. The Midtown deal is dead. 2 more men switched to Jaemin's side. The feds are asking questions about the shipping company. Each update was a cut. Small, precise, strategic. Not enough to take Seo-jun down at once. Enough to bleed him slowly. And Seo-jun couldn't do anything about it. He was in a hospital bed. His body was healing at a pace that felt insulting. His left shoulder had nerve damage that made his fingers numb. His side wound had gotten infected once, requiring another round of antibiotics that left him dizzy and nauseous. He was a man built for control, trapped in a situation where he controlled nothing. "What about Nia?" he asked Taeho one evening, and hated himself for asking. Hated the weakness in his own voice. Hated that after everything, part of him still wanted to know where she was. Still wanted her to walk through that door and say she made a mistake. Taeho hesitated. That was never a good sign. We traced the car. The man who picked her up was using a fake name. The Virginia plates were registered to a rental company. The rental was paid in cash. So you have nothing. We have one thing. The rental agreement was signed by a man named Victor Hale. The name is probably fake too, but the signature matches a person of interest in 3 states. Guide fraud. Identity theft. Financial scams targeting wealthy individuals. A con man. Nia had left with a con man. Seo-jun let that sink in slowly, like swallowing something sharp. His wife, who had left a note saying she couldn't raise a child in a dangerous world, had climbed into a car with a man who made his living destroying people's lives through deception. The irony was so thick it almost choked him. Did she know what Victor Hale was? Did she care? Or had she been blinded by the same thing that blinds everyone who runs from one fire straight into another? The desperate belief that anywhere is better than here. Seo-jun didn't have answers. He had a baby who needed him, and an empire that was crumbling, and a body that wouldn't cooperate, and a heart that felt like someone had taken a hammer to it, and then handed him the pieces and said, "Here, rebuild this while everything else falls apart too." On the 41st day, Gabriel was cleared to go home. He weighed 5 pounds and 9 ounces. His lungs were functioning. His vitals were stable. The doctor used words like remarkable recovery and stronger than expected. And Seo-jun nodded like he understood, but really all he heard was, "You can take your son home now." Home. The Buckhead estate that used to feel like a fortress now felt like a museum. Every room was too big. Every hallway echoed. The nursery Nia had decorated still had the yellow curtains she picked out. The crib still had the blanket her mother had sent from Savannah. The closet still had tiny clothes she had folded with the price tags still attached, arranged by size, by season, by the future she had planned and then abandoned. Seo-jun stood in the doorway of that nursery with Gabriel in his arms, and felt the full weight of what had happened settle onto his shoulders. He was a single father. He was a mafia boss whose empire was bleeding. He was a man whose wife had left him for a criminal who was arguably worse than he was. And he was holding a 5-pound baby, who didn't know any of this. Who just blinked up at him with those dark brown eyes and made a sound that was half yawn, half cry, like the world was too big and too loud, and he needed someone to make it smaller and quieter. So Seo-jun did the only thing he could do. He walked into the nursery, sat down in the rocking chair, and held his son against his chest while the house settled into silence around them. He didn't have a plan. He didn't have answers. He didn't have the woman he thought would be sitting in this chair. But he had Gabriel. And at 2 in the morning, when the baby cried and no one else came, Seo-jun learned something that no amount of power or money or fear had ever taught him. He learned how to warm a bottle with one hand while holding a child with the other. He learned how to check a temperature using the inside of his wrist. He learned how to rock and hum and pace and wait until a cry turned into a whimper, turned into the slow, steady breathing of a baby who had decided, for now, that his father's arms were enough. It wasn't enough. Seo-jun knew that. But it was all he had. And for the first time in his life, he decided that all he had would have to be all he needed. The first year almost destroyed him. Not in the way the bullets almost destroyed him. Not in the way Jaemin's betrayal almost destroyed him. In a quieter way. A slower way. The kind of destruction that doesn't announce itself. It just accumulates day after day, until you look in the mirror and don't recognize the person staring back. Seo-jun lost 22 pounds in 6 months. Not from exercise. From forgetting to eat. From being so consumed by Gabriel's feeding schedule, sleeping schedule, breathing schedule, doctor appointments, developmental milestones, and the constant low-grade terror that something would go wrong and he wouldn't know what to do, that he simply forgot he was a person who also needed food. Taeho noticed first. "When's the last time you ate a meal?" he asked one afternoon, standing in the kitchen of the Buckhead estate, watching Seo-jun sterilize bottles at the sink with the mechanical precision of someone who had done this exact motion 400 times. Seo-yun paused. Thought about it. Couldn't remember. "I had coffee this morning." Coffee isn't a meal. It's close enough. It wasn't close enough. But Seo-jun didn't have the energy to argue. He had been up since 3. Gabriel had a cold. Nothing serious, the pediatrician said. Just a common virus. But for a baby born 2 months early with a history of respiratory problems, a common cold felt like standing at the edge of a cliff and hoping the wind didn't pick up. He held Gabriel upright in the rocking chair for 4 hours that night, because the baby couldn't breathe lying flat. 4 hours of rocking and whispering and checking the thermometer and counting breaths per minute, because the internet said anything over 60 was assigned to go to the emergency room, and Seo-jun counted 57, and felt his chest tighten with a fear so sharp it made his vision blur. 57. 60 was the number. 57 was safe. 3 breaths between normal and emergency. That's what his life had become. Counting the distance between safe and catastrophe, and praying the gap held. The staff at the estate tried to help. The housekeeper offered to do night feedings. The security team suggested hiring a nanny. Even Taeho, who had never held a baby in his life, volunteered to take a shift so Seo-jun could sleep for more than 90 minutes at a time. Seo-jun refused all of it. Not because he didn't need help, Because he was terrified that if he let someone else hold Gabriel, they would leave too. The way Nia left. The way Jamin left. The way everyone in his life had eventually chosen their own survival over loyalty. If he was the only one holding Gabriel, then Gabriel couldn't be dropped. That logic was broken. He knew that. But broken logic was the only kind that made sense to a man running on 2 hours of sleep, and a grief he hadn't allowed himself to process. Gabriel's first word came at 11 months. Seo Jun was sitting on the floor of the living room, his back against the couch, building a tower of soft blocks that Gabriel kept knocking down with a shriek of pure delight. The blocks would tumble. Gabriel would laugh. Seo Jun would rebuild. Gabriel would demolish. A cycle that had been going on for 20 minutes. Then Gabriel looked up at him, eyes wide, mouth open, and said, "Not daddy. Not daddy. Just one syllable. Barely a word. More of a sound than a statement." But Seo Jun heard it, and his hands stopped moving, and the blocks stayed scattered. And he stared at this small, impossible person who had decided, in this moment, to reach across the gap between silence and language and choose him. Choose the sound of him. As the first word worth saying. Seo Jun pulled Gabriel into his lap and held him. And for the second time since the night in the hospital hallway, he cried. But this time it was different. The first tears had been grief. Loss. The hollowed-out feeling of watching your life collapse while standing still. These tears were something else. Something he couldn't name. Something that lived in the space between exhaustion and gratitude. Between terror and love. Between the man he used to be and the man his son was forcing him to become. He cried, and Gabriel patted his face with tiny hands that smelled like baby soap and bananas. And for about 30 seconds, the world was small enough to fit in that living room, and nothing outside it mattered. In the spaces between fatherhood, the empire continued to shrink. Seo Jun had made a decision in those early months that he told no one about. Not Taeho. Not his lawyer. Not the handful of men who still answered to him. A decision that formed slowly, the way ice forms on still water. Not sudden. Inevitable. He was going to get out. Not because he had found morality. Not because he suddenly believed his business was wrong. But because Gabriel's breathing monitor sat on the nightstand beside his bed, and every time it beeped, Seo Jun felt the distance between the life he had built and the life his son deserved. And the distance was getting wider every day. He started quietly. Redirecting money from the operations that made men nervous into businesses that made accountants comfortable. Construction. Shipping, logistics. Commercial real estate. Legitimate ventures that generated legitimate income that left legitimate paper trails. Some of his men noticed. The ones who paid attention. The ones who measured loyalty in activity rather than words. "He's going soft," they whispered. "He's scared because of the baby. He lost his nerve when he lost his wife." Seo Jun heard the whispers. Let them talk. Let them think weakness was the explanation. Because men who underestimated him had a pattern of learning the truth too late. But the truth was simpler and more complicated than softness. The truth was this. Seo Jun looked at Gabriel every morning and saw Nia's eyes. Dark brown. Curious. Full of a warmth that Seo Jun had never been able to generate on his own, but could recognize instantly in someone else. And every time he saw those eyes, he made the same promise. You will never have to run from the life I build. You will never have to write a letter and disappear. You will never have to choose between loving me and being safe. That promise required dismantling everything he had spent 20 years constructing. And he was willing to do it. Because his son said duh and meant it. And that single syllable was worth more than every dollar, every deal, and every ounce of fear he had ever collected. One night, while going through Nia's things in the bedroom she had left untouched, Seo Jun found something hidden in the pocket of a jacket hanging in the back of the closet. A second note. Not the one from the hospital. This one was older. Written on different paper. In different ink. It was from Victor Hale. Everything is arranged. Tuesday. I'll be in the parking structure, level 3, white Camry. Don't bring anything that connects you to him. We talked about this. Clean break. New start. I have the documents ready. Trust me. Dated 3 weeks before the shooting. 3 weeks. She had been planning to leave for at least 3 weeks before the bullets came. The shooting didn't cause her departure. It just accelerated the timeline. Seo Jun sat on the edge of their bed, holding both notes. The one she wrote him. The one Victor Hale wrote her. Love and deception, stacked on top of each other like pages from two different books that had been shuffled together. He put both letters in a box, sealed the box, placed it on the top shelf of his closet, and closed the door on Nia Crawford for what he believed would be the last time. He was wrong about that, but he didn't know it yet. For years changed everything and nothing. Gabriel at 4 was the kind of child who made strangers smile in grocery stores. He was loud in the way all 4-year-olds are loud, which is to say constantly and without volume control. He asked questions about everything. Why is the sky that color? Why do dogs bark instead of talk? Why does Daddy have a scar on his face? Can scars grow? If I get a scar, will it look like yours? Seo Jun answered every question, even the hard ones. Especially the hard ones. Where's my mommy? That one came at 3.5, after Gabriel started preschool and noticed that other children had a person he didn't. Seo Jun sat on the edge of Gabriel's bed, hands clasped between his knees, and told the simplest version of the truth he could manage. Your mommy had to go somewhere far away. She loved you, but she had things she needed to figure out on her own. Is she coming back? I don't know, buddy. Are you going somewhere too? Never. Gabriel studied his face the way children do when they're deciding whether to trust what they're hearing. Then he nodded once, put his head on the pillow, and said, Okay, but if she comes back, tell her I like dinosaurs now. Seoon left. The kind of laugh that starts in your stomach and ends in your eyes. And it surprised him because he couldn't remember the last time he had laughed like that. Fatherhood had sanded down his edges. He still carried authority. Men still moved when he spoke. Deals still closed with his signature. But the way he occupied a room had changed. Less predator, more presence. He wore his suits less like armor and more like habit. He smiled more than he used to, though the smile rarely reached both eyes at the same time. His businesses were almost entirely legitimate now. The construction company was thriving. The shipping logistics firm had contracts with 3 major retailers. The property development portfolio included 2 hotels, a mixed-use complex in Midtown, and a waterfront project in Savannah that the city council praised publicly. On paper, Kang Seo-jun was a successful Korean-American businessman with a strong portfolio and a young son. Off paper, a handful of people knew the foundation those buildings were standing on. But foundations can be replaced. Seo-jun was learning that. Slowly. Painfully. One legitimate dollar at a time. Jaemin had gone quiet. Not gone. Just quiet. The kind of quiet that made Taeho check security feeds twice a day and keep a backpack near the back door. But the open aggression had stopped. The audits had ended. The hemorrhaging of men and money had stabilized. Whatever Jaemin was building in his new territory, he was building it without Seo-jun's interference. And Seo-jun, for the first time in 20 years, didn't care enough to interfere back. He had a son who liked dinosaurs and asked about scars and needed to be picked up from preschool by 3:15 every afternoon. That was his empire now. The Atlanta Children's Hospital held an annual fundraiser every October. A carnival-style event in Piedmont Park with booths, games, face painting, and an auction that raised money for the pediatric wing. Seo-jun had donated anonymously for years. A debt he felt he owed after the NICU doctors had kept Gabriel alive when the odds weren't in his favor. This year, Gabriel wanted to go. Can I get my face painted like a T-Rex? You can get your face painted like whatever you want. Even a dragon? Especially a dragon. They arrived at 11 on a Saturday morning. The park was crowded. Families, volunteers, hospital staff in matching t-shirts. Children running between booths with cotton candy fingers, and faces already smeared with paint. Gabriel broke free from Seo-jun's hand within 30 seconds, and sprinted toward a booth where a woman was helping children paint small canvases with watercolors. Seo-jun followed at the measured pace of a man who had learned that chasing a 4-year-old was a losing game. The booth was staffed by a pediatric nurse from the hospital. Her name tag said Zara Mitchell RN. She was sitting cross-legged on a blanket, surrounded by children, holding a paintbrush in one hand and steadying a canvas for a little girl with the other. She noticed Gabriel before she noticed Seo-jun. Hey there, she said, her voice warm and even, the kind of voice that made children lean in rather than pull away. You want to paint something? Gabriel nodded so hard his entire body moved. What's your name? Gabriel. Like the angel. She smiled. Wide. Real. The kind of smile that created two deep dimples in her cheeks and made her brown eyes narrow with warmth. Her hair was pulled into a high puff of natural coils that caught the October sunlight like a crown. Well, Gabriel, like the angel, here's a canvas and some paint. You can make whatever you want. Gabriel sat down on the blanket like he had been coming to this booth his entire life. No hesitation. Nos chainis. Just total, immediate comfort with this stranger who had knelt to his level and spoken to him like he mattered. Seojun watched from 3 feet away. Zara painted with Gabriel for 15 minutes before she looked up and acknowledged the man standing behind him. You must be Dad, she said, not as a question. Seojun nodded. He's got good focus, she said, watching Gabriel carefully mix blue and green into a shade that didn't exist in nature. Most kids his age can't sit still this long. He gets that from his mother. The words came out before Seojun could stop them. A reflex. Old programming. He hadn't mentioned Nia to anyone outside of Taeho in over a year. If Zara noticed the past tense, she didn't comment on it. Instead, she asked, does he have any health conditions I should know about? I'm a pediatric nurse. Occupational habit. Sovi. Seoyun paused. Then sat down on the grass beside the booth, something he would never have done 5 years ago, and told her about Gabriel's premature birth. The NICU. The breathing issues that had mostly resolved but sometimes flared up during cold weather. Zara listened the way medical people listen when they actually care. Not with the distracted politeness of someone waiting for their turn to talk. With her full attention. Eyes steady. Asking follow-up questions that showed she understood not just the medical history, but the weight of carrying it. You've been managing his respiratory health on your own? She asked. Yes. That's a lot. It was a lot. But no one had ever said that to him before. Not Taeho, who showed his concern through logistics. Not the doctors, who spoke in clinical terms. Not the staff at the estate, who treated Seojun's exhaustion as a private matter. This woman, sitting on a blanket in the grass, paint on her fingers, children moving around her like she was the center of a small, colorful universe, looked at him and said the thing no one else had thought to say. That's a lot. 3 words. Simple. Honest. And they hit Seojun somewhere he didn't know was still tender. I manage, he said. Zara nodded. Then she reached into her bag and pulled out a card. This is the number for the pediatric respiratory clinic at Children's Hospital. Ask for Dr. Owens. Tell her I sent you. She specializes in preemie follow-up care. Gabriel's at the age where early intervention can make a real difference. Seojun took the card. Their fingers didn't touch. There was no electric moment. No dramatic eye contact. Just a woman who saw a child who needed something and a father who was carrying more than he let on. And did what she knew how to do. Help. He didn't ask her name. He already knew it from the tag. He didn't ask for her number. That wasn't what this moment was. But he kept the card. Put it in his wallet beside a photograph of Gabriel at 1 year old. Smiling at a camera held by a father who was learning to smile back. And when they left the park that afternoon, Gabriel holding a canvas painting of something that might have been a dragon or might have been a dinosaur, or might have been both, Seojun felt something he hadn't felt in a very long time. Lightness. Not happiness. Not yet. Something smaller and more careful than that. Like a door that had been locked for years was developing a crack. Not open. Just no longer sealed. He didn't know Zara Mitchell's story. Didn't know that she had lost a younger brother to gun violence when she was 19, and had spent the last decade building a life around the idea that if she couldn't save him, she would save everyone else's children instead. He didn't know that she had watched him sit on the grass in his tailored charcoal suit, and talk about his son's breathing with a tenderness that didn't match the scar on his jaw, or the way his security detail lingered near the parking lot. He didn't know that she had already decided he was worth remembering. But some things don't need to be known right away. Some things just need to begin. Seojun called Dr. Owens on Monday. By Wednesday, Gabriel had an appointment. By the following week, he was enrolled in a respiratory therapy program that included breathing exercises disguised as games and quarterly checkups that tracked his lung development with the kind of precision Seojun had been trying to achieve on his own for 4 years. He texted Zara to say thank you. She texted back, glad to help. How's the little artist? That was the beginning. Not of a romance. That came later. The beginning of something simpler and harder to define. A connection built not on attraction or circumstance, but on the ordinary mechanics of two people who kept finding reasons to talk. Gabriel's respiratory therapy met on Thursdays. Zara worked the pediatric floor on Thursdays. They crossed paths in the hallway once, then twice. Then it became a pattern that neither of them acknowledged as intentional. Zara would find Seojun in the waiting room, reading his phone or responding to emails from his construction firm, and sit down 2 chairs away. She would ask about Gabriel's progress. He would ask about her patience. She would deflect with humor. He would listen to the humor and hear the exhaustion underneath it. Pediatric nurses carry their patients home in their minds. The ones who recover. The ones who don't. The ones who stay longer than expected. The ones who leave too soon. Zara carried all of them. And the weight was visible if you knew where to look. Seojun knew where to look. You get attached, he said one Thursday, watching her face after she mentioned a patient who had been discharged to hospice. She nodded. Didn't try to deny it. Every time, she said. I know you're not supposed to. They teach you that in school. Professional distance. Emotional boundaries. All the textbook words for don't care too much. But nobody tells you how to watch a 5-year-old fight for their life and not carry them home in your chest. She said this without self-pity. Without drama. Just a statement of fact, delivered with the steady calm of someone who had made peace with the cost of the life she chose. That calm was what drew Seojun in. Not her smile, though the dimples were hard to ignore. Not her beauty, though she was beautiful in the way that women who don't try to be beautiful often are. It was the calm, the unshakable steadiness that said, I've seen the worst things. I stayed anyway. I'm still here. He recognized it because he had been looking for it without knowing he was looking for it. Nia had been fire. Passionate. Intense. Capable of filling a room with energy and emptying it just as fast. She burned bright and burned hot and eventually burned through everything, including her own commitment. Zara was water. Patient. Consistent. Capable of shaping stone given enough time. Not flashy. Not dramatic. Just present. Reliably, quietly, impossibly present. Park visits started in November. Seojun would bring Gabriel after therapy, and Zara would meet them if her shift was done. Gabriel took to her immediately. The way children take to people who don't perform warmth, but simply possess it. She pushed him on swings without being asked. She tied his shoes when they came undone. She answered his questions about the human body with the same seriousness she would use with a colleague. And Gabriel responded by asking more. Why do lungs need air? Because your body uses oxygen to make energy. Every time you breathe in, your lungs grab the oxygen and send it everywhere through your blood. Even to my toes? Especially your toes. What about my hair? Your hair doesn't need as much oxygen, but yes, even your hair. Cool. Seojun watched these exchanges from the bench, his arms folded. His expression neutral, but his eyes soft in a way that Taeho noticed and said nothing about. Taeho had opinions. He always had opinions. But he also had the wisdom to know when to keep them folded and put away. Dinner started in January. Casual at first. Seojun would pick up food on the way from the park and suggest Zara join them. She declined the first 2 times. Said yes the 3rd time because Gabriel asked. And she was discovering that saying no to Gabriel Kong required a kind of willpower she didn't possess. They ate at the kitchen island in the Buckhead estate, while Gabriel narrated his day between bites of chicken and rice with the breathless enthusiasm of someone who believed everything that happened to him was news. And then Marcus pushed Jalen off the slide, but the teacher didn't see it, so Jalen told the teacher. And the teacher made Marcus sit on the bench and Marcus cried. But I think he was faking because he stopped crying really fast when snack time started. Zara listened to every word. Seoyun watched Sa listen. And somewhere between the chicken and rice and the story about Marcus, something shifted in the room. Something quiet. Something that didn't announce itself. Like the first star appearing in a sky that was still technically daytime. Not dark yet. But getting there. Zara told him about her brother on a cold night in February. They were sitting on the porch of the estate after Gabriel fell asleep. 2 mugs of tea on the railing. The city lights of Atlanta in the distance, blurred by a thin layer of fog. His name was Deshaun, she said. He was 17. I was 19. He was walking home from basketball practice on a Tuesday. Wrong block. Wrong time. Somebody he had never met decided his life was worth less than whatever point they were trying to prove. She said it without tears. Without trembling. The way you talk about something that has been inside you so long it has become part of your structure. Not a wound anymore. A bone. I quit college for a year after. Couldn't sit in a classroom and listen to people talk about things that didn't matter while Deshaun was in the ground. Then I went back. Changed my major to nursing. Pediatrics specifically. Because kids shouldn't have to fight for their lives, and if they do, someone should be there who fights just as hard. Seo-jun didn't say he was sorry. He had learned that sorry was a word people used when they didn't know what else to say, and Zara deserved more than that. Instead he said, Gabriel's alive because of people like you. She looked at him. Not through him. Not past him. At him. The way she had looked at Gabriel that first day at the fundraiser. Full attention. No judgment. Just recognition. And people like you, she said. Single dads who show up every Thursday and sit in waiting rooms and learn breathing exercises and don't give up. I thought about giving up, he admitted. It was the first time he had said that to anyone. Everyone does, Zara said. The ones who matter are the ones who think about it and don't. They sat in silence for a long time after that. And the crack in the door got a little wider. The old world came knocking in March. Taeho arrived at the estate at 6 in the morning with a face that Seo-jun recognized. The face that came before bad news. The face that said, I didn't want to bring this to you, but it's here and it won't wait. Jaemin resurfaced. Seo-jun put down his coffee cup. Gabriel was still sleeping upstairs. The house was quiet. Where? Miami. He's been building something down there. Running the same playbook. But he's gotten ambitious. He's reaching into our territory again. Not directly. Through intermediaries. Testing the boundaries. What kind of testing? 2 of our shipping contracts got undercut last week. Prices that don't make sense unless someone's subsidizing them. And one of the Midtown properties received a code violation notice that came from nowhere. The old patterns. The old pressure. The old game of territory and pride and who flinches first. 5 years ago, Seo-jun would have responded immediately. Decisively. In ways that Jaemin would feel for months. Now he looked at the stairs leading up to Gabriel's bedroom and weighed the cost differently. Monitor it, he told Taeho. Don't react. Don't retaliate. Just watch. Taeho's jaw tightened, but he nodded. Loyalty sometimes meant trusting the decisions you disagreed with. And Taeho, Seo-jun added. If he comes anywhere near Gabriel or anyone connected to Gabriel, the monitoring stops and the conversation changes. Taeho understood exactly what that meant. The old world could knock. But Seo-jun had changed the locks. And the only person who had a key was a 4-year-old boy sleeping upstairs with a stuffed dinosaur tucked under his arm, and a painting of a dragon taped to his wall that a woman with dimples and steady hands had helped him make on a Saturday morning in the park. It happened on a Sunday in April. Zara was making pancakes in the kitchen. Not because anyone asked her to. Because Gabriel had mentioned on Saturday that he wanted pancakes shaped like animals, and Zara had spent an hour the night before watching videos on how to pour batter into recognizable shapes. The first attempt was supposed to be a bear. It looked like a cloud with ears. Gabriel declared it a masterpiece. The second attempt was supposed to be a giraffe. It looked like a blob with a neck. Gabriel said it was the best giraffe he had ever seen. Zara was laughing. The kind of laugh that starts in the belly and spills out before you can catch it. Flour on her forehead. Batter on her wrists. An apron that was too big because it was one of Seo-jun's and she had grabbed it without thinking. Gabriel climbed onto the kitchen stool, grabbed a spatula, and announced he was going to make a dinosaur pancake by himself. Be careful, the pan's hot, Zara said, moving to stand behind him. her hands hovering near his in case he needed steadying. "I know, Mama," Gabriel said. The word landed in the kitchen like a stone dropped into still water. Gabriel didn't notice. He was already pouring batter with the focused intensity of a child who believes he is doing something historic. Zara's hands stopped moving. Her eyes went wide. She looked at Seojun, who was standing in the doorway holding 2 mugs of coffee. He had heard it. "Mama," said casually, naturally. The way children say things when they aren't performing, but just existing in the truth of their own feelings. Gabriel hadn't thought about it, hadn't weighed the word, hadn't wondered if it was appropriate or too soon, or loaded with meanings that adults would spend hours dissecting. He said it because that's who she was to him. Zara's eyes filled. Not dramatically, just a slow, quiet accumulation of tears that she blinked away before Gabriel could see them. She looked at Seojun for permission, for guidance, for something to hold on to. He gave her the smallest nod. And Zara turned back to Gabriel, steadied his hand on the spatula, and said, "Okay, sweetheart. Let's see this dinosaur." Later that night, after Gabriel was asleep, Zara sat on the edge of Seojun's bed with her hands in her lap, staring at the floor. "I need to know you're okay with it," she said. "With him calling me that. I don't want to replace anyone. I don't want to overstep. I know his mother is gone," Seojun said. He sat beside her, close enough that their shoulders touched. "His mother is gone. She made that choice. And you've been here every Thursday for a year. Every dinner. Every park visit. Every breathing exercise. Every pancake that doesn't look like what it's supposed to look like." Zara laughed through what might have been a tear. "Gabriel knows who loves him," Seojun said. "Children don't give that word to people who haven't earned it." Zara was quiet for a long time. Then she leaned her head against his shoulder, and Seojun felt something that he had stopped believing he was capable of feeling. Peace. Not the absence of problems. Not the quiet that comes when everything is resolved. The kind of peace that exists alongside uncertainty, alongside risk, alongside the knowledge that life can turn violent at any moment. The kind of peace that says, "I don't know what happens next, but whoever is beside me is the right person." He proposed 2 months later. No ring at first. No speech. No grand gesture. He was driving Gabriel to school on a Tuesday morning when Gabriel said from the back seat, "Daddy, is Zara going to live with us forever? Would you like that?" "Yes, because she makes good pancakes and she knows about lungs and she smells nice." Seojun looked at his son in the rearview mirror and thought, "That's a better list of reasons than anything I could come up with." He bought the ring that afternoon. A simple band with a single stone. Nothing ostentatious. Nothing that screamed money or power, or any of the things he used to think mattered. He proposed on the porch. The same porch where she had told him about Deshawn. The same porch where they had sat in silence and let the door between them get wider without forcing it. "I'm not the man people think I am," he told her. "I used to be. But I'm not anymore. And the man I'm becoming is the man who wants to build the rest of his life with you." Zara held the ring between her thumb and forefinger, studied it like she studied everything. With patience. With attention. With the calm certainty of someone who didn't make decisions until she was sure. "I know who you were," she said. "I'm not blind. And I'm not stupid. But I've watched you with your son for over a year. I've watched you choose him over everything else. Over money. Over pride. Over the life you built before he existed. A man who does that isn't the man he used to be. He's the man he decided to become." She put the ring on her own finger. "Yes," she said. And the door opened all the way. They married in a small ceremony in the backyard of the estate. 18 people. Gabriel was the ring bearer. Taeho was the best man, which required him to wear a suit that wasn't black for the first time in anyone's memory. Zara's mother flew in from Memphis and cried through the entire ceremony, while simultaneously taking photographs. It was small, quiet, warm. Everything Seojun's old life had never been. The years that followed were the kind of years that don't make for dramatic stories. Routine. Stability. Gabriel starting elementary school and coming home with report cards and stories about friends and complaints about homework. Zara continuing her work at the hospital, now as a senior pediatric nurse, still carrying her patients home in her chest, but coming back to a house that held her when she did. Seo Jun's business is growing steadily, the construction firm now employing over 200 people, the shipping company expanding into the southeast corridor. Normal life. The kind of life Nia had said she wanted. The kind of life she never stayed long enough to build. Seo Jun thought about her less and less. Not because the wound had healed completely, because the scar tissue had thickened enough that it no longer ached with every breath. She became a fact of his history rather than a presence in his present. A chapter he had read but no longer reread. Until the phone call. It came on a Thursday evening. Seo Jun was reviewing blueprints for a new development project in Decatur when his personal phone rang. A number he didn't recognize. A 202 area code. Washington, D.C. Mr. Kong, this is Special Agent Diane Holloway with the Federal Bureau of Investigation. I'm calling about Nia Crawford. Seo Jun put down his pen. She's been arrested, Agent Holloway continued, along with Victor Hale and 6 others as part of a multi-state fraud operation. Guide fraud. Identity theft. Financial crimes totaling approximately $12 million over the last 8 years. 8 years. Nia had been running scams for 8 years. The entire time Gabriel was growing up. The entire time Seo Jun was rebuilding his life. The entire time Zara was showing up on Thursdays and pushing Gabriel on swings, and learning to make animal-shaped pancakes. Nia was in another city, using a different name, helping a con man steal money from people who trusted her face. She had left a man she called dangerous and walked straight into the arms of a man who was a different kind of dangerous. The kind that smiled while emptying your bank account. The kind that built trust for the sole purpose of burning it down. What do you need from me? Seo Jun asked. Your cooperation. We're building a case. Hale used some of your former business contacts as laundering channels. We need to verify timelines, confirm connections, and ensure the evidence chain is solid. Send me the paperwork. He said it without emotion. That surprised him. He expected to feel something. Anger. Vindication. Sadness. Some echo of the wound she had left when she walked out of that hospital with a con man's letter in her pocket, and their newborn son's monitor beeping in the background. But he felt nothing. The absence of feeling was, he realized, the proof that he had healed. He hung up, set the phone down, walked upstairs, checked on Gabriel, who was asleep with a comic book on his chest, adjusted the blanket, kissed his forehead. Then he went back downstairs, sat on the couch next to Zara, and told her everything. Zara listened without interrupting. When he finished, she was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "Do you need to process this alone or do you want me to sit here?" "Sit here," he said. She did. And the peace held. The federal paperwork arrived in a thick manila envelope that Seo Jun opened at his desk in the home office while Gabriel practiced piano in the next room. Choppy, enthusiastic piano. The kind of piano that makes music teachers wince and parents smile. The documents laid out 9 years of Victor Hale's operation in careful, clinical detail. He was good at what he did. Seo Jun had to acknowledge that the way one professional recognizes competence in another, regardless of the field. Hale had built a network across 6 states, targeting high-net-worth individuals through fabricated investment opportunities. He used charm. He used manufactured credibility. He used women. Specifically, he used Nia. She was the face. The trust builder. The one who sat across from wealthy targets at dinners and fundraisers, and made them feel comfortable handing over large sums of money to a man they barely knew. Because if a woman like Nia was involved, it must be legitimate. She was beautiful, well-spoken, educated. She didn't look like a criminal. But the file also made something clear that changed the story Seo Jun had been telling himself for 9 years. Nia hadn't been tricked. She hadn't been manipulated by a predator who found her at a vulnerable moment. She hadn't stumbled into Hale's world by accident or desperation. The evidence showed she had been in contact with Victor Hale for 4 months before the shooting. Not 3 weeks, as the letter in the jacket suggested. For months. Which meant the planning had started while she was still decorating the nursery. While she was still sleeping in Seo Jun's bed. While she was still telling him she loved him over dinner, and pressing her forehead against his chest at night. For months of deception. 4 months of performing the role of wife while building a plan to exit. 4 months of lying so convincingly that Seo Jun, a man who had built his entire career on reading people, never saw it. The timeline changed things, not the facts. The facts were the same. She left. She took nothing. She abandoned her son. But the motivation was different than what Seo Jun had believed. She hadn't left because she was scared. She hadn't left because the shooting pushed her to a breaking point. She had been leaving for 4 months. The letter about danger and safety, and not being able to raise a child in his world was a script. A performance. The final act in a play she had been rehearsing since before Gabriel was even born. She left because Victor Hale promised her a life that was exciting without being dangerous. A life of hotels and aliases and money that appeared without violence. She left because she wanted something Seo Jun couldn't offer, reinvention. The chance to be someone new in a different city with a different name, and a different story. The baby was never part of that plan. Gabriel was a complication, an anchor to a life she had already decided to leave. And when the emergency C-section forced her hand, she did the math and chose freedom over motherhood. That was harder to forgive than the abandonment. The abandonment of a husband could be understood. People leave marriages every day. Some leave for good reasons. Some leave for bad ones. Either way, it's a choice between two adults. But the abandonment of a newborn in an incubator, a 4-pound baby whose lungs couldn't fill without a machine, a child who didn't get to vote on whether his mother stayed or went, that was something else. Seo Jun sat with the file for a long time. Then he signed every document the FBI asked him to sign, sealed the envelope, and left it on the hallway table for courier pickup. He didn't keep copies. He didn't need to. What he needed was in the next room, playing piano badly and beautifully, and he walked in and sat on the bench beside Gabriel, and put his hands on the keys and played a chord he remembered from a lesson he had taken in Busan at age 12. And Gabriel looked up at him with those dark brown eyes, his mother's eyes, and said, "I didn't know you could play." "I can't," Seo Jun said. "I just know one chord." "Teach me." "It's the only one I know." "That's okay. We can learn the rest together." They played the same chord 17 times in a row. Each time, Gabriel's timing got a little better. Each time, Seo Jun's chest got a little lighter. One chord. 17 repetitions. A father and son finding harmony in the simplest possible way. Zara stood in the doorway and watched them. She had been crying. Not because of the piano. Because of the file she had seen on the desk. The file Seo Jun hadn't hidden from her because hiding things from Zara wasn't something he did. She cried for the baby in the incubator. For the man in the wheelchair. For the woman who chose a con artist over her own son. For the 9 years of silence that Seo Jun carried without complaint. She cried because she was a nurse, and nurses understand what abandonment does to a child better than almost anyone. And she cried because she loved that child as if she had brought him into the world herself. And the thought of someone choosing to leave him still felt impossible, even after all this time. After Gabriel went to bed, Seo Jun found her on the porch. "You read the file," he said. "I'm sorry. I saw it on the desk and I left it there because I wanted you to see it." She was quiet. "You deserve to know who she really was," Seo Jun said. "Not the story I told myself for 9 years. The real version. The version with 4 months of planning and a con man she chose over her own child. Does it change things for you?" Seo Jun thought about that. Really thought about it. The way he thought about business decisions. Carefully. From every angle. "No," he said finally. "Because the forgiveness wasn't about her. It was about me. About not carrying something heavy into the life I was trying to build." "When did you forgive her?" He didn't have a specific date. It hadn't happened in a moment. It happened the way most real things happen. Slowly. Through accumulation. Through Gabriel's first steps and first words and first day of school. Through Zara's presence on Thursdays and the pancakes on Sundays and the porch conversations that lasted until midnight. Through the gradual, stubborn construction of a life that proved Nia's departure wasn't an ending. It was a redirection. "Somewhere between Gabriel's 2nd birthday and the day you said yes to dinner," Seo Jun said. Zara leaned against him. "I forgive her too," she said. "Because if she hadn't left, you and I would never have existed. Gabriel wouldn't know me. You would be sitting on this porch alone. And I would still be looking for someone steady enough to build with. Seo-jun put his arm around her. The night was cool. The city hummed in the distance. Somewhere inside, Gabriel slept with a comic book and a stuffed dinosaur, and the certainty of a child who has never questioned whether he is loved. 2 weeks later, Gabriel twisted his ankle during basketball practice at school. The call came at 2 in the afternoon. Zara was at the hospital already, finishing a shift. Seo-jun picked up Gabriel from school, carried him to the car because the 9-year-old insisted he could walk and then immediately proved he couldn't, and drove to Grady Memorial for an X-ray. Grady Memorial. The same hospital where Gabriel was born. The same hospital where 3 bullets were removed from Seo-jun's body. The same hospital where Nia had written a letter and disappeared into a white sedan with Virginia plates. Seo-jun hadn't been back since the day they brought Gabriel home. 9 years of avoiding this building. Not consciously. Just the way people avoid places that hold memories they haven't finished processing. A quiet, instinctive detour that became habit. But Gabriel's ankle was swelling. And Zara was already there. And the hospital was 10 minutes closer than any other emergency room. So he walked through the doors of Grady Memorial for the first time in 9 years, his son on his back, his wife texting directions to the radiology department from 3 floors up, and the weight of history pressing against his chest like a hand he couldn't see. The lobby looked different. Renovated. New flooring. New lighting. The kind of clean, modern design that erased the past without acknowledging it. But Seo-jun remembered. Every tile. Every turn. The elevator that went to the NICU. The hallway where he had cried at 2 in the morning. The waiting room where Taeho had told him about Jaemin's betrayal. All of it was still there, underneath the new paint. The way all history is. Present. Invisible. Waiting for the right trigger to surface. Zara met them at radiology. Gabriel was explaining, with great enthusiasm and questionable accuracy, exactly how the ankle injury had occurred. So I went up for the ball and Marcus, he's always fouling people. Marcus grabbed my arm and I came down wrong and my ankle went like crack. It didn't crack, Seo-jun said. It felt like it cracked. That's called a twist. Well, it twisted like a crack. Zara checked the ankle with professional efficiency, while Gabriel continued his dramatic retelling. Minor sprain. No fracture likely, but the X-ray would confirm. Ice, elevation, rest, and a week off basketball that Gabriel immediately protested. They were waiting for the radiologist when the lobby encounter happened. And everything Seo-jun had spent 9 years building was about to be tested by a single moment in a hospital hallway. The radiologist said it was a minor sprain. No fracture. Gabriel looked disappointed. As if a fracture would have been a better story to tell his friends. Can I at least get crutches? He asked. You don't need crutches for a sprain, Zara said. But crutches are cool. You can have an ice pack and a couch. That's not cool at all. They walked through the main lobby toward the exit, moving at Gabriel's pace, which was slow and exaggerated and accompanied by a limp that was at least 40% performance. Zara held Gabriel's left hand. Seo-jun walked beside them, one hand resting on his son's shoulder. A family moving through a hospital lobby on a Thursday afternoon. Nothing remarkable about it to anyone watching. A man, a woman, a child with a slight limp. The ordinary architecture of people who belong to each other. They were 20 feet from the front entrance when Seo-jun heard his name. Not Mr. Kong. Not the clipped, formal version that lawyers and business partners used. His full name. His real name. Spoken in a voice he hadn't heard in 9 years but recognized immediately. The way you recognize a song from the first 3 notes even if you haven't heard it in a decade. Soo-yun. He stopped walking. Gabriel and Zara stopped beside him. And Seo-jun turned around. Nia Crawford stood 12 feet away, flanked by 2 federal marshals. She was wearing a gray institutional jumpsuit. Her wrists were connected by a chain that hung between them with about 18 inches of slack. Her hair, which used to fall in waves past her shoulders, was pulled back tight. Her face was thinner than he remembered. Sharper. The kind of thin that comes not from diet but from years of running and stress, and the slow erosion of pretending to be someone you're not. She looked older than 38. She looked tired in a way that sleep couldn't fix. But her eyes were the same. Dark brown. The same eyes she had given Gabriel. The same eyes that used to look at Seo-jun across the dinner table with a warmth he believed was real. Those eyes moved fast. From Seo-jun to Gabriel to Zara, and then back to Gabriel, and stayed there. The 9-year-old boy standing in a hospital lobby with an ice pack wrapped around his ankle, and a look of confusion on his face, because a woman in chains was staring at him like she had seen something impossible. Nia's mouth opened, closed, opened again. Is that? She started, and her voice cracked on the second word like glass under pressure. Seo-jun said nothing. Is that Gabriel? The sound of his name in her mouth did something to the air. Changed its weight. Changed its temperature. Like someone had opened a window in a sealed room, and let in a draft that carried 9 years of absence with it. Gabriel looked up at Seo-jun. Daddy, who is she? Seo-jun's hand tightened on his son's shoulder. Not from anger. From the instinct that had been rewired into him over 9 years of single fatherhood, and then partnership with Zara. The instinct that said, protect this child from anything that could hurt him, including the truth, if the truth arrives at the wrong moment. Someone I used to know, Seo-jun said. It was the truest answer he could give in a hospital lobby with marshals watching and his son looking up at him with trust that hadn't been broken yet. Nia's eyes were wet. Her chest was moving fast, breathing in short, shallow pulls that reminded Seo-jun, with a cruelty he didn't intend, of the way Gabriel used to breathe in the incubator. Desperate. Insufficient. Like the air wasn't getting where it needed to go. He's so big, she whispered. He's so tall. He looks, she stopped. Swallowed. He looks like you. He is me, Seo-jun said. And meant it in every way that sentence could be meant. One of the marshals shifted his weight. A subtle signal. Time was not unlimited here. Nia was being transferred somewhere, and this unplanned encounter in a hospital lobby was not part of anyone's schedule. But Nia didn't move. She stood rooted, her chained hands hanging in front of her, her eyes moving between the 3 people standing in front of her like she was trying to memorize a photograph she would never be allowed to hold. And then her eyes settled on Zara. Zara, who was standing beside Gabriel with quiet composure. Who hadn't flinched when Nia appeared. Who hadn't stepped back or dropped Gabriel's hand, or made any movement that suggested she was anything other than exactly where she was supposed to be. Nia studied her the way you study someone who is standing in the space you used to occupy. The kitchen where you used to cook. The house where you used to sleep. The life where you used to belong. Who are you? Nia asked, and her voice had a new quality to it. Not accusation. Recognition. The slow, terrible recognition of someone who is seeing the answer to a question they have been afraid to ask. Zara didn't answer immediately. She looked at Seo-jun. A question in her eyes. Not for permission. For guidance. For a reading on how much truth this moment could hold. Seo-jun gave her a small nod. I'm his wife, Zara said. Simply. Without triumph. Without cruelty. The way you state a fact that doesn't need decoration. The word landed on Nia like a physical weight. Her face, which had been holding together through something that looked like adrenaline and desperation, collapsed. Not dramatically. Quietly. The way a building collapses when the foundation has been compromised for years, and the last support finally gives. Her shoulders dropped. Her chin lowered. Her chained hands came together in front of her stomach, like she was trying to hold something that was already gone. And he calls me Mama, Gabriel added, because he was 9 and had no concept of the weight his words were carrying. Nia made a sound. Not a word. Not a cry. Something between both that came from a place so deep it didn't have a name. The sound of a woman realizing in real time, in a public space, with chains on her wrists and marshals at her back, that the life she abandoned had rebuilt itself without her. Better than before. Stronger than before. Complete. Without her. I'm sorry, Nia said. The words came out broken and wet and aimed at no one and everyone at once. I'm so sorry. I should never have. I didn't think. I was. I know, Seo-jun said. And that's all he said. Not because the words didn't deserve more, but because the man standing in this lobby was not the man lying in that hospital bed 9 years ago. That man would have wanted explanations, apologies, reasons, answers to the questions that had eaten at him for years. Did she know about the hit? Did she hesitate at the door? Did she look back? This man didn't need any of it. Not because the questions had been answered. Because they had stopped mattering. The forgiveness he had built, brick by brick, year by year, was not for Nia. It was structural. It was the foundation of the life he was living. Removing it now to make room for anger or confrontation would be like pulling the supports out from under a house he had spent 9 years building. He wouldn't do that. Not for her. Not for closure. Not for the satisfaction of watching her see what she had lost. She could see it without his help. She was already seeing it. A man who was no longer broken. A son who was healthy and loved, and calling another woman mama with the easy confidence of a child who had never questioned his own safety. A woman standing in the space Nia had voluntarily left, holding the hand Nia had voluntarily released, wearing a ring on the finger Nia had voluntarily abandoned. The marshals moved. A gentle but firm signal. Time was up. Nia took one step backward. Then another. Her eyes never left Gabriel. "Does he know about me?" she asked. A last question. The kind you ask when you're running out of chances. "He will," Seo-jun said. "When he's ready." Nia nodded. She tried to say something else. Her mouth formed the beginning of a word, but the word didn't come. Maybe it was his name. Maybe it was sorry again. Maybe it was a goodbye that she should have given 9 years ago, and was now arriving too late to matter. The marshals turned her. Gently. Professionally. And Nia Crawford walked away from her family for the second time in her life. But this time it wasn't her choice. And this time, the man she left behind didn't need to read a letter to know it was over. He already knew. He had known for years. Gabriel tugged on Seo-jun's hand. "Daddy," she was crying. "I know, buddy." Was she sad? Yes. Why? Seo-jun looked down at his son. 9 years old. Curious. Kind. Full of a capacity for empathy that came from somewhere neither of his parents could take credit for. Because she saw something she lost a long time ago, Seo-jun said. And she realized she couldn't get it back. Gabriel thought about that for a moment. "That's really sad," he said. "It is. Can we get ice cream on the way home?" Seun almost left. The way children move through gravity and back to joy without pausing for transition was something he would never fully understand, and always be grateful for. "Yeah," he said. "We can get ice cream." Zara squeezed his hand. Not the kind of squeeze that says "I'm proud of you," or "that was brave," or any of the things people say after difficult moments. The kind that says, "I'm here. I saw that. You don't have to explain anything." They walked out of the hospital. 3 people. 1 family. And behind them, somewhere in the building's corridors, a woman in chains was learning the same lesson that every person who walks away from love eventually learns. The door closes. And sometimes the person on the other side changes the locks. They stopped for ice cream at a place on Peachtree Street that Gabriel had been lobbying for since the last time they drove past it. A small shop with a chalkboard menu and handmade waffle cones and a teenager behind the counter, who looked like he would rather be anywhere else but smiled anyway. Gabriel ordered chocolate with sprinkles. Zara ordered vanilla. Seo-jun ordered nothing but sat across from them in a booth by the window and watched his son eat ice cream with the kind of focused determination that only 9-year-olds bring to dessert. Normal. Ordinary. The kind of moment that doesn't announce itself as important until you look back on it years later and realize it was the most important part of the day. They drove home with the windows down because Gabriel insisted the evening air was just right, a phrase he had picked up from Zara, who said it about everything from temperature to tea strength. The Buckhead estate looked the same as it always did. Big, clean, warm with the lights on. The house that used to echo with emptiness now hummed with the low, steady frequency of a home that was lived in. Shoes by the door. Gabriel's backpack on the bench. A half-finished puzzle on the dining table. Zara's nursing textbooks stacked on the kitchen counter, because she was studying for a certification exam she didn't need, but wanted anyway because that's who she was. Someone who never stopped reaching. Seo-jun carried Gabriel upstairs. The boy had fallen asleep in the car, the way children do mid-sentence, ice cream still on his chin, his sprained ankle propped on a pillow Zara had positioned in the back seat. He didn't wake up when Seo-jun lifted him. Didn't stir when his father carried him up the stairs. Didn't open his eyes when Seo-jun laid him on the bed and pulled the covers up and placed the stuffed dinosaur under his arm. Gabriel slept the way only children who feel completely safe can sleep. Deep. Total. Without one part of the brain staying awake to listen for danger. That kind of sleep is earned. Not by the child. By the parent. By the years of showing up. By the nights of warming bottles and checking breathing monitors, and sitting in hospital hallways and learning respiratory exercises, and building a world where a 4-pound baby could become a 9-year-old boy who sleeps like nothing in the universe could touch him. Seo-jun stood in the doorway and watched his son breathe. In. Out. In. Out. Steady. Strong. Unassisted. No machines. No wires. No monitors beeping in the dark. Just a boy breathing. The simplest miracle in the world. And the only one that mattered. He closed the door quietly and went downstairs. Zara was already on the porch. 2 mugs on the railing. Her legs tucked beneath her on the bench. Her hair down now. The coils settling around her shoulders in the way they did at the end of long days. She looked up when he came through the door. How is he? Sleeping. Still has ice cream on his chin. Did you wipe it? I left it. He'll find it in the morning and think it's hilarious. Zara smiled. The dimples appeared. The ones that Seo-jun had first seen at a booth in Piedmont Park on a Saturday morning 5 years ago. The ones that made him sit on the grass in a charcoal suit and talk about his son's breathing with a stranger who turned out to be the rest of his life. He sat down beside her, picked up the mug. It was warm. Whatever she had made, it smelled like ginger and honey, which meant it was the tea she made when something needed processing. Not talking. Processing. The quiet kind. They sat together for a long time without speaking. The city was visible in the distance. Atlanta at night. Lights stacked on lights, highways threading through buildings. The slow pulse of a city that never fully sleeps. From up here it looked beautiful. Organized. Like everything was where it was supposed to be. Seo-jun used to look at that skyline and see territory, control, geography that translated to power and influence and the careful distribution of fear. Now he looked at it and saw the place where his son went to school, the park where Zara pushed Gabriel on swings, the hospital where strangers saved his child's life, the streets where he drove to pick up ice cream on Thursday evenings. Same city, different eyes. I thought I would feel something, he said finally. When I saw her. Zara waited. I thought it would hurt, or make me angry, or make me feel like all of this. He gestured at the house, the porch, the mugs, the night, was somehow less real because she was standing there reminding me of what it was built on. And? Zara asked. And I felt nothing. Not nothing like numbness. Nothing like completion. Like the last question mark in a sentence that's been running for 9 years finally got its period. Zara sipped her tea. Thought about that. You felt peace, she said. Is that what this is? That's what you've been building for 9 years, Seo-jun. Not a business. Not an empire. Peace. A life where the worst thing that happened to you doesn't define what comes next. He looked at her. This woman who had walked into his life through a painting booth and a business card and a series of Thursdays that turned into forevers. This woman who held his son's hand in a hospital lobby and said I'm his wife without flinching. This woman who cried over a file that described the crimes of a woman she had never met, because the child that woman abandoned was now her child too. Nia thought she was escaping something, Seo-jun said. She thought she was running from a life that would destroy her. What did she run to? Something worse. Different packaging, same destruction. She traded bullets for fraud, power for deception. A man who was dangerous to his enemies for a man who was dangerous to everyone, including her. That's not irony, Zara said. That's consequence. You don't outrun yourself by changing cities. Seo-jun nodded. And the thing she said she wanted, he continued. The safe life, the normal life, the life without midnight phone calls and hospital waiting rooms. I built that life. Not for her. For Gabriel. But I built it. You built it, Zara confirmed. And she saw it today. Standing there in chains, in the same hospital where she left our son fighting for his life, she saw the life she wanted being lived by someone else. He paused. By you. Zara set her mug down, reached over, took his hand. I didn't replace her, Seo-jun. She left a vacancy, and I filled it. Not because I was trying to, Because Gabriel needed a mother. And you needed a partner. And I needed something to build with, someone who understood that showing up is more important than showing off. That was the difference. That was what Nia never understood and Zara understood from the beginning. Love is not a feeling. It's a decision you make every single day, to stay in a room where it would be easier to leave. To hold a hand when your own hands are tired. To answer the same question for the 17th time. To make pancakes that look nothing like animals and call them masterpieces. To sit on a porch with ginger tea after the hardest Thursday of someone's life, and not say a word until they're ready. Love is presence. And presence is the one thing Nia was never willing to give. Seo-jun held Zara's hand and looked at the skyline. The worst night of his life had been the beginning of the best one. 3 bullets in a restaurant parking lot. A baby born too soon. A wife who disappeared into a white sedan with a man who would eventually lead her to a pair of handcuffs and a federal courtroom. All of that destruction. All of that suffering. All of those nights of warming bottles and counting breaths and crying in hospital hallways. All of it had led here. To this porch. This woman. This life. To a boy sleeping upstairs with ice cream on his chin and a heart that had never been broken because his father decided, in a wheelchair beside an incubator 9 years ago, that breaking was not an option. Seo-jun squeezed Sae's hand. Thank you, he said. For what? For seeing Gabriel before you saw me. At the park that day. You talked to him for 15 minutes before you asked my name. He was more interesting, Zara said, and her dimples appeared again. And Seo-jun felt something that he now recognized as the thing he had been building toward all along. Not power. Not money. Not territory or fear or the respect of men who measured worth in violence. Home. The understanding that home is not a building. It's the people who stay. The ones who hold your hand when the world is loud and the night is long, and the past shows up in a hospital lobby wearing chains and asking about the child it left behind. Home is the woman on the porch. Home is the boy upstairs. Home is the decision to keep building even when everything tells you to stop. And when Nia saw who stood beside Seo-jun that day in the hospital, she finally understood the truth she had spent 9 years running from. You don't find peace by leaving. You find peace by staying. By choosing the hard mornings and the long nights and the imperfect pancakes and the bad piano chords played 17 times in a row. By choosing the person who scares you. Not because of what they've done, but because of how deeply they love. By staying in the room when every instinct tells you to run. Nia ran. Zara stayed. And that single difference between 2 women created 2 completely different endings. One woman standing in chains, watching the life she lost through the window of her own choices. One woman sitting on a porch, holding the hand of a man who had been waiting his entire life for someone brave enough to stay. The night settled over Atlanta like a blanket pulled gently over the shoulders of someone who has finally stopped shaking. And on the porch of a house in Buckhead, a man who used to believe fear was the strongest currency in the world held the hand of the woman, who taught him something fear could never buy. That the strongest thing a person can do is not leave. It's come back to the same place, the same person, the same life, every single day, and choose it again. Seo-jun chose. Zara chose. Gabriel never had to. And that was the whole point. Subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss our next story. Share your thoughts in the comments and inspire others. Which moment hit you the hardest? Which line made you pause? Tell me below, because your voice is what keeps these stories alive. And if this story moved you, share it with someone who needs to hear it tonight. Because sometimes, the story you share is the one that changes someone's life. See you in the next one.